Hello. The question I'm often asked is, what does an academic essay look like? And to answer that, we're going to have to go through a process of looking at what academic essays are and what is required of you. And that means we can look at what academic style is. And that's really what this is about. Communication is what you're doing, and communication can be, as I learned many years ago, informative and persuasive and entertaining. And we're not looking to entertain. I certainly don't want you to entertain me. In your academic writing, what I want to do is to see evidence of understanding, comprehension, depth of reasoning, talent and commitment, and ability to convey persuasively, and to try and cover this in a really short video. I'm going to share a presentation with you and retreat into the corner of your screen. So let's do that. So here's the thing. To explain academic writing, I first of all have to explain discourse. And discourse is a straightforward thing. We're simply talking about communication, as I'm undertaking here, because this is discourse, but it's unfortunately only one way, or debate, where you argue the pros and cons of something. It is something which comes in four types, if you like, or four modes, and those are narration and description and exposition and argumentation. The academic writing is a combination of those, and I think the best way to explain that is to contemplate what academic style is. You see, what it's not is formal. And while it might seem appealing to regard academic writing as formal and not informal, because you understand informal writing or communication as colloquial and casual, if you like, we're simply saying you avoid informality, you avoid colloquialism, you avoid emotion, because emotion doesn't have any role. And I think you just heard the scholar dog snore, and that's wonderful. It's nice and human, isn't it? The other caveat or caution is that you cannot use or should not use personal language, because you're not writing about yourself. If you are, and I often ask students to prepare me personal or reflective pieces, and that's one way of getting people to look deep within themselves, to work out what makes them tick and why they've responded or reacted in particular ways and whether they're learning or not. The point is, you don't use personal language unless you're doing that, because you try to keep it as it is written on the page in front of you: clear, concise, focused, structured, and backed up by evidence. You're trying to get people to understand what you have to say, and you're doing that by writing cogently and fluently. And that doesn't mean you use big words. Big words have a place. They have a place if it conveys, the big word conveys something which a smaller word wouldn't do. But it doesn't have to be cumbersome. It doesn't have to be ponderous. In other words, you don't have to write fancy in order to write academic. And any academic who chooses to speak or write fancy is drawing a blind over some inadequacy, I think. The objective is to have clear communication in your oral or your written discourse. So the academic discourse that we can undertake comes in four different flavors. There's descriptive discourse and analytical discourse. There is persuasive discourse, and obviously there's critical discourse. And the approach that you use is really just a combination of all of those, because there's a recipe for academic writing. And if you understand the cautions that I've noted, then really you're putting together a little package deal of description and analysis and persuasion and critique. The argumentative essays you tend to write, particularly in a senior academic program, are going to be descriptive to an extent, but there will be a lot of analysis, because that is the cognition, if you like, the cognitive achievements that you're able to demonstrate, which the evaluator, the assessor, the grader, the marker, your instructor, the academic is trying to establish. There may be some critique, and that's only going to be countered with a lot of critique if you have in fact been asked to compare and criticize. But if you're not, you'll incorporate it because it demonstrates that you have a broader perspective than a simple, flat, two-dimensional view. Finally, there's going to be some persuasion because you are, after all, trying to convince the academic that your point of view is the point of view which really counts. So this argument is trying to do something. And what it's trying to do is convince your audience to accept a point of view. And if you recognize it's quite straightforward, if there is a point of view, then there has to be a debatable topic. No debate where there are facts. We simply take facts at their face value. If you are debating anything, then there has to be a proposition. And the proposition is central. It is the, as I've written for you there, the major premise of your argument. But that has what we sometimes refer to as planks. There must be planks to your argument. And the planks to your argument are going to be like really solid scaffold planks, okay? We are talking the big menhirs here, not just some spindly piece of wood. Have at least 3 major claims or planks to support your argument. I don't think in the kind of academic writing that you're going to be doing in an examination, for example, that there is opportunity for there to be very many more than 3 major claims. If you are preparing an assignment and you've been allowed to write 2,500 or 3,500 words, well, that's a different kettle of fish. But if you are typing up any kind of writing and you are going to be preparing somewhere between 2 and 3 pages, recognize you're running at around 350 to 400 words a page. So you're typing no more than 1,000 words. And 1,000 words with 3 claims to support and defend, I think that you are probably not going to be able to use very many more than around 250 to 300 words for each of those claims. When you support or buttress, because I quite like that word, when you buttress your claims, you're simply using evidence. And there are only 2 types of evidence. There are facts and there are opinions. Facts are natural phenomena like gravity, for example. And facts can be observations because you can conduct observations. It is the data that you collect, the data points you collect when you are undertaking research. And those data points can be primary, collected by yourself, or they can be secondary, collected and arising in some other form. You can also use statistics. In other words, the parameters that can be established around a factual body of observations. And you can use measurements, and measurements arise in laboratories, clearly, and in companies, because in any organization, business organization, you are measuring output and you're measuring productivity, and that implies that you have measurements and you have statistics. Aside from evidence arising as facts, you have evidence arising as opinion, and opinions can be expert or opinions can be public. So we talk about trying people in the court of public opinion. It's like reading the reader's comments at the end of any article on BizNews or Quora or any other forum. They start to descend and deteriorate really quickly because it is, in fact, the court of public opinion. And we're writing academic work here, okay? Deep, scholastically solid and defensible opinions. So let's look at that a little bit more deeply. I'm going to say that expert opinion, in other words, not public opinion, expert opinion is reasoned. There is reasoning, there is logic, and we see it arising as legal or judicial opinion, and that can be called upon as evidence, and we see it arising as scientific or professional. Now, you and I, working in the field of business, will look to issue professional opinions, which, based upon our judgment, are are conjecture on our part, but deduced from facts and evidence within the realm of operation that we enjoy responsibility for. The thing is, though, that expert opinion is something which is usually qualified, and you'd be an absolute fool to think that your opinions hold in every context, in every enterprise, in every geographic jurisdiction, that your opinions are valid for, that your opinions about people are valid for all people, because it just isn't the case. So we look to situate our opinion by qualifying it for the particular context in which we believe it to hold true. In other words, the generalization we make has to be something that we feel confident about. So bearing that in mind, we can now get down to the business over here of saying, what does a recipe look like? And I'm going to say there's a series of steps. And if you're writing about anything, there will clearly be an introduction. That introduction is going to set out the parameters of your work, in so much as you are sending back to the person reading this the question that you've been asked in this stylized frame of reference, which says, I have a question for you. Can you give me an answer to it? We tend in business to ask our own questions, unless they're given to us by our boss or by interested parties to whom we have to respond. We formulate our own questions. We ask why the phenomena around us are occurring, and if they are adverse, what we can do about it. But in an examination or in an academic context, in a business course, for example, you have to set out those parameters and you must specify your proposition. In other words, the major premise of the argument you plan to present. And you must also specify the major claims upon which you will base or predicate your proposition. That forms the introduction. So it's not like a casual, how do you do, but it is a form of greeting, if you like. It's a firm handshake. It sets the tone for the rest of the conversation. It is followed by the first claim. And that claim typically has to arise in the first sentence. It might be a paragraph, it might be 2 or 3 paragraphs, depends on personal writing style and the situation and the depth to which you must explain or support or buttress or defend that claim. There will be reasoning, and remember that reasoning has to have evidential support, and you remember that evidential support arises in the form of facts, indisputable facts, as well as opinion. You understand that opinion has to be expert, and I'm going to point out to you that if you're writing not about yourself, because this is not a piece, a reflective piece, if you are writing about a situation where you are looking to introduce opinion, only where you are a recognized expert in something with a level of indisputable credibility can you offer your own opinion at this point. So you're looking at calling upon the judgments, the claims by recognized experts. And that's how citations arise. So if you have a course leader, an instructor who requests that in any form of writing you present before them for mark award, that you need to cite journal articles, what you're looking to do is provide the expert opinions which are documented in our knowledge commons, which you will find by reviewing EBSCOhost or Google Scholar, or whatever the case might be. That is where the expert opinions reside, where they can be located. You're going to be doing exactly the same thing for the second claim and the third claim and any subsequent claim. You present the claim and you back yourself and you back your claim. You back it with facts, you back it with opinions, and you cite the experts. One more thing, however, you're not ready to conclude. It's always a good idea to anticipate the objections that might arise. Now, in the case of academic work, you have in examinations and assignments only one reader, an audience of one. the man or woman with the red pen, and they might have a counterclaim because you might have presented an argumentative position which is contrary to their personal position. For example, if your argument flies in the face of any acceptable logic, then you're going to have to have presented a very convincing set of claims with a very persuasive volume of evidence. But anticipate the counterclaims, even if they're not your markers, not your instructors. Anticipate what those claims might be, and and enter into a reasoned rebuttal thereof. In other words, defend what might be attacks against the depth and solidness, for want of a better word, of your argument. That entitles you to enter into a conclusion. And a conclusion is nothing other than a reiteration of the proposition, a reiteration of the reasoning, and usually some sort of call to action. Now, that call to action is the call to action that you present to your marker, your examiner, your grader, your instructor, to call upon them to accept your reasoning because of the soundness of the argument you present and the depth of the argument you present. And if you do that and you get that right, then I think that you're in the running for a good mark.